You guys probably have some rookie drafts flying fast and furious right now. I know I do, but lost in all the shuffle of upside and ceiling and floors and projections and this guy's better than this guy is the mistakes that we want to avoid in rookie drafts. And I'm going to break down all 5 of those in today's video so that you guys don't make these mistakes again, because I know I've made them in the past and I've definitely learned from them. So if you guys enjoyed this video at any point, this is the first time you're checking out the channel, hit the subscribe button, leave a like if you enjoyed as well. Comment down below what's the biggest mistake in your opinion that people make in rookie drafts. And if you guys want access to my rookie rankings, my dynasty rankings, all fully updated over on flockfantasy.com right now. Using the promo code FSE, you'll get 30% off any of the packages and a 2-day free trial to check out all the content that myself and all of your other favorite dynasty content creators are making over there. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, mistake number 1, and I would say this is the most common. This is the one that I get the most questions about, is drafting for team needs in the month of May as we're doing rookie drafts right now. I think this is where redraft bias creeps into the dynasty landscape the most. And I would say most newer dynasty players entering their first rookie draft will look at their roster and think, wow, I just need one running back to be a competitive team. I just need one more wide receiver. I just need a tight end. Whatever they actually need, they completely ignore what the consensus board looks like, what the consensus values. And if you guys want an example, take a look at this team that I have in one league. If you guys can see the team there on the screen, you can see that I have 2 lockdown quarterbacks, Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins, for a competitive window. I have a great wide receiver core. I have George Kittle. All that I really need for this team to be competitive is running backs. And wow, I have the 101, so I'm going to add Bijan to this team. I have the 102. Most newer dynasty players would probably think, hey, let's take Bijan and Gibbs 101, 102. Let's rock and roll. Let's do this thing, and let's try and win the championship. But if you do that, you are sacrificing a solid round of, startup value on Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and CJ Stroud, knowing that they go higher in startups. It makes no sense to just blindly take Jahmyr Gibbs 102 because I need a running back more than I need a quarterback. And even though I would also argue that I needed a quarterback for this team as well, because Cousins is up there in age. So what you want to do instead in rookie drafts when it comes to filling needs is look at the consensus board. If you wanted to come out of the class with 2 running backs, you see that Bijan is ranked 101. You can take Bijan at 101, no problem. Gibbs is ranked near 104, 105. So instead of just drafting Jahmyr Gibbs at 102, I can then trade down into the area where Jahmyr Gibbs is supposed to go. Or if all else fails, you take the more valuable option with Bryce Young at 102. You can always trade from now until the start of the season for more running back talent, because Bryce Young is the more valuable asset. Ergo, you should draft Bryce Young. And again, keep in mind what your league values. If your league doesn't value quarterbacks, that would factor in. But you don't have needs in May. That is the most common mistake that a lot of new dynasty players make. Unless you're in a competitive window trying to win, you don't even want to be focused on needs at all. Because if you're a rebuilder, you just want to take the value, take accumulation, take value insulated assets like a quarterback, like Bryce Young, like Anthony Richardson, whoever you value there. And B, even if you're a competitive team or trying to be a competitive team, your needs are not a factor until the toe hits leather in September. So what you want to do is take, in this case, Bryce Young at 102, maybe try and shop him for a Jonathan Taylor, maybe try and shop the pick itself for Breece Hall, whatever. If you want a running back, then go out and do that. Rookie drafts should be best player available always. And only when players are interchangeable within the same tier do you favor the bigger position of need. So, for example, one of the tier breaks in this class is 105 and 106, in my opinion. If you are on the clock at 105, deciding between Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a running back, and JSN, who's a wide receiver, and you have no running backs on your team, and you have 7 great wide receivers on your team, then, of course, go with Jahmyr Gibbs in that situation. Then you can take the position of need, but you don't want to be hopping tier breaks just to draft whatever position you need for your roster. So that is mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 to avoid in rookie drafts is trying to outsmart the market. We all have stances. We all have opinions on these players. Maybe you don't think Anthony Richardson is very good. You don't want to draft him. He's off your board. Maybe you think that Quentin Johnston is the wide receiver 1 in this class. That's fine, but what's not fine is passing up on value in rookie drafts just to prove yourself right and try and outsmart the market. So let's use the same example of my team here. Say your stance is that you need a running back and Gibbs is the second best player in this draft. You don't think Bryce Young is very good. You don't think Anthony Richardson is very good. You don't think CJ Stroud is very good either. So your goal is just, I'm going to take 102 Jahmyr Gibbs because he's the second best player in this class. Instead of trying to outsmart the market, as I kind of talked about, and take Gibbs at 102, behind Bijan Robinson at 101. Instead, what you want to recognize that Gibbs is not the consensus 102. He's the consensus 104, 105 type of area. And I can get value by trading down to 104, ensuring that I still get Jahmyr Gibbs, or 105 if you're in a quarterback heavy room, trading down to where it's appropriate to select that player, pocket a second round pick, maybe pocket a future first round pick, maybe pocket a young wide receiver, a young running back, whatever you can get to trade down, because you were willing to select Jahmyr Gibbs at 102 anyways. It's better to get something small than it is to just select Jahmyr Gibbs 102 and get nothing at all for moving down. So the reality is we're all going to disagree with consensus on certain things, but ignoring consensus is a bigger mistake than following it blindly. So instead, what we want to do is exploit consensus, not outsmart it, not ignore it. We want to exploit what consensus thinks. Ironically, this is the same exact concept that, Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones employed in the 1990s when they created the trade value chart. And that's what happened in the actual NFL draft. And we're seeing it trickle down into fantasy. So mistake number 3 to avoid in rookie drafts is overvaluing landing spot. This one's a very simple concept for most people to understand in theory, but when the actual bullets are flying in rookie drafts, you need to know which positions landing spot actually matters for and how much to factor in landing spot when it comes to making a pick. So we all know the famed example, right? People in 2020 took Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor at 101 because Clyde Edwards-Helaire went to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jonathan Taylor went to the Indianapolis Colts. Even still, just last year, people did not learn their lesson. People were taking Sky Moore, who went to the Kansas City Chiefs, Christian Watson, who went to the Green Bay Packers, over Garrett Wilson because he went to the Jets. So here's an easy tip. For wide receivers, landing spot matters very, very little in rookie drafts. And you might be thinking, well, why doesn't it matter? Shouldn't you want a wide receiver to go with a good quarterback with low target competition and a great scheme fit for their skill set? Yes, ideally, I definitely would want that. But all that matters realistically at wide receiver is, can you get open? Can you catch the ball? Can you command volume? Can you command targets? So the perfect example of this year is Rashee Rice, being a subpar wide receiver prospect, not a very good player. And he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. He's now getting elevated up rookie draft boards, automatically assumed that he has some superstar upside just because he went to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Josh Downs, who went to the Indianapolis Colts, was a great slot prospect. He is now in a situation where people don't like it, right? You have Anthony Richardson, a mobile quarterback, run heavy offense, all that stuff. But he is a much better prospect than Rashee Rice significantly. So you should still take Josh Downs over Rashee Rice and avoid the trap of overvaluing landing spot, because that would have caused you to draft subpar wide receivers last year like Sky Moore and Christian Watson over Garrett Wilson, who is a known stud. And obviously Downs isn't as good as Garrett Wilson, but it's just an example of how to use tier breaks. Talent always wins out at wide receiver. Take the receiver who you think, in your opinion, had the best film, the best profile, the best production, whatever matters to you most. Take that player over the landing spot darling. At quarterback, at running back, at tight end, landing spot matters a little bit more, because obviously we boost a guy like Anthony Richardson up the board a little bit because he goes to Indianapolis with a great scheme, great coaching staff, great talent around him, as opposed to if he went to, say, Houston. At quarterback, the landing spot matters more than it does for wide receivers, and same goes for running backs and tight ends to a degree as well. But still, these things should be factored in, not the entire reason why you want to draft someone. The entire reason people want to draft Rashee Rice right now is because he was a second-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. Has nothing to do with his profile, nothing to do with his production, nothing to do with his film. He's just a Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver that's a second-round rookie pick right now, and everybody's throwing darts at the dartboard on Rashee Rice. I'm telling you, it is a mistake. And to close out this video, mistake number 4 and mistake number 5 are both basically balancing two concepts. Sticking to pre-draft biases is mistake number 4, and ignoring draft capital altogether. And mistake number 5 is drafting with zero conviction whatsoever. So I'll explain what I mean in a second. Every year, mistake number 4 comes into factor, right? We see people stick to their pre-draft evaluations to a fault. Last year, people took Malik Willis still in the late first round, despite him falling to round 3 of the actual NFL draft. People still took Justin Ross, who went undrafted in round 2 because he went to the Kansas City Chiefs and they liked him before the draft. This year, I've seen people take Zach Evans, Kayshon Boutte, and Sean Tucker in round 2 of rookie drafts, even though they were picked very late in the NFL draft or went undrafted in Sean Tucker's case. The opposite side of the spectrum, though, is also something we want to avoid as well. So that mistake number 4 is, pre-draft biases, sticking to that and ignoring draft capital altogether. The other side of the spectrum is copying verbatim exactly what the NFL thinks, assuming that they know all and they're not going to make any mistakes either, and drafting these players in rookie drafts in the exact order they were drafted in the NFL draft. That can cause people to overvalue draft capital to some degree as well. So the balance for me and what you guys should employ in your rookie drafts is this. Generally speaking, as a rule, if I have like a running back that I thought was a day 2 running back that goes early day 3, for example, last year, like I did with Tyler Algier, Damian Pierce, and Isaiah Spiller, then I have no issues drafting that running back who I thought was a day 2 prospect who went on day 3 over terrible wide receiver prospects who got day 2 draft capital, like Tyquan Thornton, Alec Pierce, Jalen Tolbert, and Danny Gray. Even though those guys got day 2 draft capital, they were not good players in my pre-draft evaluation, and that worked out 2 out of 3 times, right? Obviously, Spiller was a miss, but Damian Pierce and Tyler Algier, I have a lot of in Dynasty as a result of that concept. So this balance, the way that you can kind of apply it in this class is in a couple ways. Number one, sorting through these day 2 wide receivers, right? In my grades, Jonathan Mingo, who was the first wide receiver off the board on day 2, was my wide receiver 10 pre-draft. Just because he got drafted ahead of my wide receiver 5 pre-draft, Josh Downs, my wide receiver 6 pre-draft, Jaden Reed, wide receiver 7, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver 8, Cedric Tillman, and wide receiver 9, Marvin Mims, doesn't mean I'm actually going to draft Jonathan Mingo that high. They all got day two draft capital. There's no reason that I should change my rankings, in my opinion. They all landed in spots as well, for the most part, where they can command volume. So in my rankings, they didn't change at all post-draft. Jonathan Mingo was still my wide receiver 10, despite him coming off the board as the wide receiver 5 in actual NFL draft standings. If Downs had gone on day 3, if he was a 4th, 5th round pick, and then Mingo goes 39 to the Panthers, then obviously, yes, I would take Jonathan Mingo at that point in time. But these guys all got day 2 draft capital, so it's just fine with me, in my opinion, to keep the rankings exactly as they were. Same goes for highlighting some of these running backs, right? You guys can see some of the running backs that went, late day 2, early day 3. I've highlighted the ones that were top 8 running backs in my rankings before the draft. And even though I'm going to factor in the draft capital, I am not going to completely fade Roschon Johnson and Chase Brown just because they went on day 3 of the NFL draft. Both of those players landed in spots where they can command volume, where they can command a workload. So when it comes to a day 2 wide receiver in Tank Dell, who I thought was a terrible prospect, and a day 3 running back in Chase Brown, who I thought was a day 2 caliber running back prospect, I'm going to take Chase Brown because I don't think Tank Dell was a very good prospect, and I'm not just going to elevate him because he got day 2 draft capital. So don't be afraid to have conviction, but at the same time, don't completely stick to pre-draft bias to a fault. So like I said, it's a balance. Take in all the factors. Roschon Johnson, for example, was my 202 in my pre-draft rankings. He went on day 3, so I'm not going to keep him at 202. I'm going to take him in the 206 to 208 range in a lot of rookie drafts. That feels like a calculated risk, a calculated way to keep that conviction about Roschon Johnson, but at the same time, not to stick to my pre-draft bias about Roschon Johnson. So I tweeted this out a couple months ago to give you another example, but my draft grades at running back have a correlation to keep trade cut value that was actually higher than both draft capital, raw draft capital, and Lance Zierlein's grades, who I know people put stock into. So mathematically, it actually makes sense for me to stick to my grades within reason. And that led me to drafting a lot of Tyler Algier last year, drafting a lot of Damian Pierce, like I said earlier. So at wide receiver, the correlation for my grades was a little bit worse. It was 0.40, which is a little bit better than draft capital, but it was actually worse than Lance Zierlein. So basically, if you have a process and your process has proven to be, good in the past, or maybe you follow a handful of fantasy analysts that have good processes and you trust their opinion, definitely keep that in mind. Don't just draft blindly, verbatim, how the NFL valued these players. And same goes for the opposite side of the spectrum, the players I didn't like as well. If you liked Zach Evans a ton pre-draft, you had him as like the 202 in the class, maybe he's going at 306 right now. Don't take him at 202 still, or don't take him at 205 even still. Maybe take him at like 302, where he's going at 306 in drafts, just to make sure that you still keep that conviction that you think Zach Evans was a good player, while at the same time also factoring in the fact that he was a 6th round pick. So the last honorable mention, the last mistake that I think people make in their leagues as well, is remember that it is your fantasy team, right? Whether your goal is trying to be profitable, whether your goal is trying to have fun in your dynasty leagues and get stock in the players that you like, make your own picks, make your own mistakes. If you trust my opinion, that's fine, but don't do exactly as I say. If you have conviction that a player that I like is terrible and you don't like him at all, then stick to your guns and thank God that you did if that player doesn't work out. What you shouldn't do is blindly take my advice, blindly take somebody else's advice, and let those people make the mistakes in your rookie drafts for you. What you want to do is make your own mistakes and hit your own home runs. So if you liked David Bell last year, I also liked David Bell, and you drafted him, then it's on you. If you also liked him, then it was your own mistake. But if you just drafted David Bell because I told you, then you didn't make your own mistakes. You let me make your mistake for you. You also want to hit your own home runs as well. If you think that I am talking shit about Zach Evans and you think he's a great player, then by all means, hit your own home run. If it works out, then you can say that I'm an idiot in the comments section. Don't worry. I got burned plenty by David Bell last year also, but that's what makes Dynasty fun, right? I can go back to the drawing board, refine my process to make sure that doesn't happen again. But again, hit your own home runs and make your own mistakes in rookie drafts. Don't just blindly follow my advice or somebody else's. So if you enjoyed this video, like I said, leave a like. If this is the first time you're checking out this channel, hit the subscribe button. We're almost at 19,000 subscribers. Really appreciate the support and the bonus, viewership on the channel this time of year. So we definitely appreciate any growth that we can get. And leave a comment down below. What do you think of these mistakes? What do you think is a bigger mistake, maybe that I didn't talk about? Definitely leave that in the comments. And if you want my rookie rankings, my dynasty rankings, flockfantasy.com is how you can get them. Use the promo code FSE for 30% off and get a 2-day free trial, like I said. So with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.